Well, thank you very much for having me. I hope that if you haven't seen the film, that you do, and I'd love to get it shown again in Brighton, because we've only had one screening in Brighton, and we've had about 200 around the country. And it's a very pertinent film that has worked at two levels. One, it's worked for people who were around during the strike, that they regard it as their story, from the rank and file, it's their story. But it's also worked for another generation who were barely born or weren't born during the miners' strike. And they could see the visceral hatred of their parents, the Thatcher and the rest of it, but didn't quite understand how their quite nice parents could be quite so frothing when they see these figures on the television, and explained to them. And I made it with my stepdaughter and her friends, who none of them were more than 30 at the time. And so, it spoke to both audiences. And I think the importance of remembering Wapping is the same thing, that one, we have to remember what we were involved in if we were involved in it, and two, we have to explain to people who weren't around quite how the media has got into the mess that it's in today. And it really is all down to Thatcher and Murdoch and what they achieved at Wapping. Because back in 1981, in early January 1981, Margaret Thatcher was in deep political trouble. Rupert Murdoch was full of bluff and bluster, but massively in debt, and he wanted to take over the Times. And they had a meeting in Chequers, and they did a deal. You alluded to, but they actually, they sat down in Chequers and had a meeting. For 30 years, this meeting was denied, absolutely denied. It never took place. It was never on the record. When the archives were finally released from the, and it came out, it's a tiny little two-line thing in one of the documents, gave the game away. They had a meeting, and basically Murdoch got the Times, which was completely against the law of the land, Monopolies and Mergers Commission, all that. 40% of British media he was given, absolutely unprecedented. And in return, he supported Thatcher unconditionally through the war on the unions, through the Falklands War, 1983 election, through the miners' strike, and she paid him back. She absolutely paid him back at Wapping. And people who were in the print unions, I'm in the NUJ, but people who are in directly in the print unions all know more of that. That was the deal, and it has led us to where we are today. I mean, a revolving door between the Directorate of the Metropolitan Police and News International. Literally, you're assistant commissioner, you leave and you get a job at News International. We know that. I think it's also worth remembering what Thatcher was about, because she's painted as just a horror figure and someone you should drive a stake through the heart of, and the rest of it. But she had a very, very clear plan, and the plan was absolutely explicitly to break the trade unions. It's something that we talk about in Still the Enemy Within, and in the DVD we've got a document where they spelt it out, the Ridley plan. The miners were mainly in the spotlight, but they spelt it out step by step how they were going to do it. But who was that horrible MP who was revealed as all that racist shit? What was his name?
You're going to have to narrow it down a bit more.
Yeah. One of them poses as a kind of urbane liberal now. Blackmail, yeah. I think so. It just came out in the cabinet meeting. The frothing rabid racism of this guy. But she surrounded herself with advisors who admired the military coup in Chile in 1973, with the cadre of the Young Conservatives, who are now the cabinet, were running around with Hang Nelson Mandela t-shirts on. She had an economic advisor who was in the Sunday Times saying what this country needs is a dose of Schacht. And I thought, what the hell's that? Schacht was Hitler's finance minister. And this was, you had to read the financial pages and whatever which I was doing as a young journalist. But you found that out, and that was what they were about. They destroyed 30% of the manufacturing industry in 18 months. I had an uncle who worked for the World Bank. He was based in Washington, a family of refugees. They were spread from Germany all over the world. He pitched up in Washington, and he'd come over, and we, family gatherings. He'd go, "What's she doing? She's mad. She's destroying the economy." It's a conscious decision to shut down vast swathes of manufacturing industry, to undermine the organised workers. And they went through to the miners' strike. After the miners' strike came Wapping. And Murdoch was in negotiations around Wapping until it looked like the miners weren't going to win, until it looked like the miners were going to lose. And then suddenly he switched tack. All the talks were off, or they were very, very dubious talks, there to string along the union leaders while he went for the jugular, which was to break the unions. And I came across Wapping. I kind of arrogant young journalist and socialist worker at the time, and I thought, I've discovered this absolutely horrendous thing that's taking place. I knew about the Wapping plant, but I found out about what was going on at Wapping because I was reporting on a strike in a shipyard in Southampton, right, where the people finishing the ships off, there were electricians finishing the ships off, and they were permanently short-manned on their teams. And they were striking over it. And the shop steward said to me, and I went in and banged the table with the manager, and he said, "I can't get, I'm trying to help, I can't get the people because they're all going to Wapping." So we followed it through, and I've got a letter from the branch secretary of the ETU in Wapping, which I'll scan and give to the archive. I only just found it because I was digging around for this meeting. We wrote out what was happening, and the Electricians Union, the leadership of the Electricians Union nationally and in the South East region, and the full-timer in Southampton were recruiting staff. And we did a story in Socialist Worker, and again, being naive, the published date was a Saturday, and we finished the paper on the Tuesday night, and we sent it off to all the nationals who never credited us for the story. But we said, look, he's got a secret workforce, electricians, and so on. And we thought, right, that'll be it, I mean, now obviously people knew about Wapping, and they were trying to do stuff anyway, and stuff. We thought, get it out in the open. That'll be it. Nothing happened. This was like September 85. And it went on for another 6 months. And I think what's even doubly frustrating was, I also knew the branch secretary of the Post Office Engineers Union in the City of London. This is before the BT was privatised. And this guy's branch were putting the phone exchange in at Wapping, and they were doing everything they could not to put the phone exchange in at Wapping, calling on Brenda Dean to put a picket line on, do something. Anyway, nothing ever happened. And we were reporting they're working 2 shifts at Wapping, they were doing training runs. Nothing seemed to happen. Brenda Dean and Tony Dubbins had separate negotiations with Murdoch, and they were strung along. And I think that's quite well spelt out in Linda Melville's book, The End of the Street, isn't it? What actually took place. And when he was ready, when he was finally ready, the print workers were locked out, and it was a massive, long, bitter dispute. Per capita is the wrong phrase, but there were proportionally more printers and printers' supporters were arrested and battered in the Wapping dispute than were in the miners' strike, and that was pretty awful. It was a pretty awful dispute. And I went down to Wapping several times a week, but every Saturday night for a year, like a lot of people. I think the only good thing that came out of it for me was my partner at the time said to me, "Are you really going to go to Wapping every Saturday night?" I said, "Well, I have to." She said, "That's fine, you do that, but I want children." And we had kids on the back of me saying I'm going to go to Wapping and you can do what you want your kids. So that's how I ended up with 2 kids. Quite a silly little aside, but there we go. Now I just want to again digging around, looking through old contacts and ringing people up and so forth. I came across one of the Electricians Union officials who was really instrumental in recruiting the scabs for Wapping. It was a guy called Rodney Herford, who ran the southern region of the ETU, and he was the main mover in recruiting people. First of all, ETU members who was scab, and that was a criteria for getting this job at Wapping, and then anybody who would give them an ETU card and scab. And he worked for the ETU. He delivered the workforce. He fell out with the ETU, and he was recruited by the Home Office to work, as they called him, an industrial relations consultant. But actually, it was to try and break the Prison Officers Association, and he's mentioned in some documents at the end of the 90s. Something happened to him after that, and he pitched up in Nottingham, where he hooked up with a 15-year-old heroin addict who was into prostitution, and they started a blackmail racket. So this is the kind of person that Murdoch employed and the ETU employed. They started a blackmail racket, blackmail 50 or so people. Basically, they would film them having sex with a prostitute and then blackmail them. All was going swimmingly in Rodney Herford's life until he tried to blackmail a Sun reporter. And so, having helped Murdoch set up the Sun did him in, and he got 30 months. But that's the kind of characters that were around the strike breaking, and so forth. And we are, other people have touched on it, so I won't repeat it. Living with the legacy of Wapping today in the media, and just that idea. When I went into the media, and I worked at Socialist Work, and then I've worked on a whole lot of other titles. That idea that you held people to account. There's always been a yellow press, but there was a much stronger tradition of holding people to account, and it wasn't just like the big blockbusters. The Guardian does this, they do a big blockbuster, and then it's useless for months, and then they do another big blockbuster. No, good journalism's about holding people to account all the time. That's really been eroded, and the change in the economics of the media has really affected journalism, because it used to be that the journalism was just a small part of the total production cost. Now the costs of the journalists are quite high compared to the total production cost. So you're constantly getting cut. Whenever there's a little blip, you're getting cut. So in all kinds of ways, apart from the corruption and so forth, it's affected the quality of journalism. And I feel that really, really profoundly. So that's that. My big obsession in life was around the miners' strike. I don't know why. That was just the thing that was an absolute pivotal point for me. It was at the end of that, you had to take a choice. So did you give up, or did you fight on for however long it took? And I decided to fight on. And about 4 years ago, as the years went by, I got increasingly angry about the coverage and the memorials to the miners and so forth, and how fatuous they were, and how they repeated these arguments that the miners could never have won, or at best it was two psychopaths, Thatcher versus Scarborough certainly wasn't a psychopath. But you could never get a proper argument across. I was looking for, why hasn't there been a good film made, and all the rest of it. Nothing happened. In the end, decided that we would try and do something. And it just grew and grew and grew. The project grew. I'm going to wind up in a minute. The project grew to create this film, Still the Enemy Within, and it just hit a chord. And I think it's quite important because if you're in an audience that's been through the last 30 years, it can be quite downbeat, but actually the film and the making of the film hit a chord. People want to change, you know, people really, really want to change. They want to know their history so they don't make the same mistakes again. And so we made this film Still the Enemy Within. If you haven't seen it, I mean, I would say it, wouldn't I? It's a good film. I can see all the warts in it as well, but it's got amazing reviews and it's available there for a tenner, but put on another screening. And we're hoping to do something on a smaller scale around the Wapping Dispute, because it's a story that really, really needs to be told. Not to reminisce, because I haven't got any time for, you know, it's good, I do have time, it's quite good fun in the pub and whatever, but it doesn't do any good to just reminisce. It is a guide to future action. That's what we try to do with the film. That's what I think anybody who's been around a long time is trying to do now. And I'm very, very optimistic, actually. I know I'm not in the Labour Party. I'm still in Socialist Worker. But I'm so happy that Corbyn got elected. So happy he got elected. And I think that the important thing for us all is to build a movement that isn't inward-looking, right? That just says what really matters. Defend the NHS. Fight for refugees. Let's get some union rights back. Let's stop trying. All these things, these are big battles that are coming up in the next few months. Win those. We'll protect Jeremy. We'll knock the Tories back, and all these bastards running around with their austerity and their secret Hang Nelson Mandela T-shirts, which I'm sure they still wear. They'll get the punishment that they deserve.
Very much, Mike. And Mike might say it, but actually I think I'd say it, and a lot of other people who have seen Still the Enemy Within would absolutely agree that it is an excellent film. If you haven't seen it, we highly recommend you get a copy and see it. And